Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from sixth group and we are going to explain and monitoring engaging learning activities. Before we start our presentation, let me introduce my group. Myself, Dian Diarni, as moderator and presenter. Next, Putri Nabila Althoof as presenter. Muhammad Thoriq Fauzan as presenter, and Syifa Wulan as presenter. Okay, let's begin our presentation with the first presenter, Putri Nabila Althoof. Putri Nabila Althoof, times is
Okay, thank you for the moderator. Next slide, please. Okay, I will I will describe about problem-based learning, and then problem-based learning is a, is a student-centered pedagogic in which students learn about the subject through the experience of solve an open-ended problem found in trigger material. In problem-based learning, process does not focus on the problem solving with a definition solution, but it allows for the development of other despite skill and attributes. And then problem-based learning have some of part, and the first part is non-problem based approach. So unlike the other case in this book or in the book, case 7.1 is purely fiction and never happened at that, and hopefully full never will. Okay, we will see that in the case in 7.1, Mr. Du teacher a high school carpentry caused by first uh, conduction and unit and interest nail into the wood with the hammer. And the second unit is the sawing lumber, and subsequent listen include mature blanket, spiraling corner, joining end. Selected the material is the sanding interest the skew, the care of the drill, workshop separately, and using a drill. First, Mr. Du doesn't student study and practice at skill in the relationship from the other skill, never related the skill. So this means in this case is the entrance class made focus on the large project. So Mr. Du just was it tell the student what they want, what they will do. Like student do this, do this, do this. No best no based on the approach. So such as the construction of the portable classroom building. Unlike Mr. Du, almost all industrial and art teacher provide students with learning active that teach students special skill and the integral applications of their skill to solve real life problem. Okay, next slide. And the next slide is about problem-based approach. So before is problem and non-problem based approach, and now is problem-based approach. According to Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary 2013, a problem is a unsettled question raised for a unique or solution or a sort of the relatively stress and reflection because the problem suggests a difficulties. People are often included to think of the problem as the understandable, but its existence of the problem serves as a strong motivator to human adventure. A perfectly satisfied person, one who records no problems, lack a motivation to change and thirst to learn. Why would be anyone want to learn to read unless the person felt a need to the different writing communication? Why this? Because that outside a mathematics course to the problem as there were ever the word then flexion without the first of being confused on the problem that are a modification. And then for this material problem based approach, actually I have one case is case 7.3 is about Miss Olson who has observed her 24 sixth grade at the wet that school long enough to understand about the interesting in the planning mathematics unit of the Quaint flexion. So because they want to learn about mathematics unit, Mr. Olson makes something new or some plan. So she began by exercising 6 students to the basketball group and 9 to the cake group, 9 to running group, and while the other 18 are working on the excitement. So after that, Mr. Olson have they to make some report about which team is the better in the basketball, and then what recipe should be what the favorite in the class, and uh, do we have run faster in 30-meter race on 6-meter race. And then Mr. Olson used inductive question to teach technical to help her student discovering and such a problem can efficiently solved by using the equatorial right situation. So in the non-problem, the teacher just uh, was it just say or just make a student to do something, but in problem-based approach the student have like a goals, and the goals make a problem. So the goals is so clear. Okay, next slide. And then intrinsic motivation via the problem-based approach. Student can be intrinsically motivated and the engagement cooperative in a learning activity. When there's activity focused on the problem, the student feel need to solve it. Learning activity, much as those typically conducted by industrial art teacher by Mrs. Olson in the case 73, and the comfort student with a real world problem are problem-based learning activity. The goal of the some teaching as a unit might lead themselves to provide problem learning activity. For much situation, you need to be use exerted motivation to ensure student engagement. When will the organized problem-based activity are used. However, obtaining student cooperative and engagement is usually a much easier task for the teacher. Okay, next slide. And then now is about delivering direction for a learning activity. Okay, the first part is about explicitness, specifically specificity and directness. Indirect, nonlinear communication are appropriate for teacher to use as the conduct activity-based learning activities designed to stimulate students to reason, appreciate, discover, or create. Okay, let's see this. The case 7.60 is during a problem learning activity, Mr. Shortworth is trying to help her junior high student in discovery participle of the physical that make it possible for aeroplanes to fly. At one point in the lesson, Judy asks, what will happen if the wings of the plane were curved on the bottom like they are on the top? So Mr. Salt is Like I wonder, let's think about it in the case, will the air pass over the top surface faster or slower than if would be the bottom of the surface? Okay, and then because in this case, Mr. Shortword knew the answer to Judy equation, but in the answer to directly, she provided another equation. Nonlinear probably communicate was the appropriate in this situation because Mr. Shortword objective was the lead Judy to reason, not simply not to know the answer, but indirect simulation thinking appropriate student with a direction and the unovercoming learning activity. Your communication should be linear, explicit, specific, and direct. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then uh, the matter is about 9 point about direction. So Mr. Alderman and Mr. Rice explicit direction communicate that students were to do during learning activity more exactly and efficiently that either Mr. Duncat or Mr. Don Brigmas and Mr. Alderman and Mr. Rice look and fed to the following. First, the student of the teacher who displayed business-like attitude, like more likely to following direction, efficiently that a student of the teacher who seems lackadaisical and less organized. And then two is as Jonas 1979 has pointed out, teachers' body language is a powerful medium for communicating expression to students. And the third is because giving direction is frequently routine occurred and in the classroom, teacher can minimize transition time, spend time communication producer displaying more business attitude and reduce the most of the teacher talk into the classroom by establishing signal our clues and instantly communicate with delivery speaking student. And then four is speaking to student who is are not attentively listening is not only the wasting time and the energy but also creating initiative behavior pattern. Okay, next. And then five is students who have learning that their teacher is usually saying only once tend to listen the first time the teacher speak. And six, students are more likely to listen carefully to the direction of teacher who rest in their remark to exactly what students need to know and judge them successful in the upcoming learning activity. And seven, when the teacher are appropriate direction, they are not conducting discovery, listen, or any other sort or higher cognitive level learning activity. Eight, students are far more likely to follow direction that provide specific guideline for exactly what to do with done with the follow the ambiguously worded general direction. And then nine, the more sense at we can see and seeing and hearing that a teacher used to communicate direction, the more likely students are to understand them. Okay, that's all for me. Bring it back to the moderator.
Okay, thanks for Putri Nabila Altof. The next presenter will be the next material. Will be explained by Muhammad Thoriq Fauzan. Muhammad Thoriq, time is yours.
Okay, thank you to moderator who has given me time for explain monitoring student engagement. Okay, here I want to explain about monitoring student engagement. There are single area of the classroom that we can monitor our students while we circulating among them. First, at the board. Here means is not in the board, okay? But here means is, what is it? Front of the board, which means it is at the front of all students in the center of class. Next is behind a lectern. Next is by a dog cam. Now, not only at the board, here we can find it is just like behind a lectern, and last is by a dog cam. Not only we see with our eyes, but we can also see all students who learn with us by a dog cam. So we can manage, so we can monitoring all students without our eyes. I'm sorry, actually, maybe our eyes will be see everything every students will do, but I mean we can monitor, we can manage, we can see, we can watch all our students by dog cam. This consider organizing learning activities, even large group presentations, so that you are free to move about the classroom. Okay, based on case 7.18, Miss Sinner could able to monitor her students well because she can get a better single area while circulating the students in the classroom. So she can hear of her two students which they doing a short conversation or exchange while Miss Cinder writing. And also Miss Cinder could notice Rosalina, which she raised her hands to answer the question from Miss Cinder. And she also always offer ahead to the projector and the whiteboard so she could focus on her students. Throughout the activity, Miss Cinder was so busy from her place by the overhead projector and the whiteboard that she missed myriad indicators of who was on task, who was off task, who had insightful comments to make, who was following the discussion, and who got lost in the process. So the point from the base on case 7.18, it is just like Miss Cinder is what always overhead on the projector, and then she was always overhead in whiteboard. So when she overhead in projector and whiteboard, she could notice, she could see each of students who was on task, who was off task, who had insightful comments to make, who was following the discussion, and who got lost in the process. It is. Okay, next. Variety of learning activities. There are variety of learning activities. First, we begin with a brief lecture followed by 40-minute independent work session. Second is two-part discussion session. Okay, first, we begin with a brief lecture followed by 14-minute independent work sessions. It is just like if we want to, what is it? We want to teach the students, we must warm the students up. So the students will be able to understand. Not only warm up, we must brief or tell or prepare the students so they can follow our studies. Okay, next two-part discussion session is the core of the teaching, which is just like the discussion about example from the reading section. It is just like if we have a reading section and then we have a explanation section. It's like that. Next, based on case 7.17, after completing a brief lecture on reading Putri, he distributes a 3-page document to each student containing first direction on the first page, second the poem Richard Corey on the second page, and third a list of questions for discussion on the third page. We can see that before Mr. Rice started his lesson to his students. He briefing lecture his students by reading Putri This variation has function to warm up student and stimulate student to catch the lesson easier. And also with the two-part discussion session, Mr. Rice brief lesson his student before they start reading Putri. So before they read the second and third paragraph, Mr. Rice will brief lesson in each paragraph, which means to make the students prepare and get ready to listen and read the Putri reading. Okay, next. Ideas for lecturing session. For students to be engaged in lecture, they must attentively listen to what the teacher is saying. There are also components of students' engagement for many lecture sessions. First, taking notes. Second, attempting to follow teacher prescribed through patterns. Okay, here we can see that students to be engaged in the lecture, they must attentively listen to what teacher is saying. The component of student engagement for my lecture is first taking notes. Without the student taking notes, students will not be able to hear what the teacher says. Okay. Next is attempting to follow teachers prescribed through pattern. Okay, next. Such engagement requires students to be cognitively active while physically inactive. Sustaining this type of attention is difficult for older students and virtually impossible for younger students. Okay, next. Here I want to tell you all about 15 points about lectures. First, students are most likely to be engaged during a lecture session if the teacher has provided clear direction for behavior. Second, some sort of advantage or organizer to direct students' thinking helps students actively listen during a lecture. Third, signals, especially nonverbal ones, can efficiently focus on students' attention during a lecture. 4. Lectures are useful learning activities for teachers who want to have a group of students concurrently follow a common through pattern. 5th, voice volume. Inflection, pitch, rhythm, and pace should be strategically modulate according to the message you want to send and the level of students. Students are more likely Students are more likely to follow lectures that use professional quality communication technology. At least 3 advantages can be gained from video recording lectures ahead of time and playing them for students in class. 8. Especially for older students, consider taking the idea of video record the lectures to the level of a flipped classroom. Goodwin and Miller 2030, Harriet and Schiller 2030. Ninth, entertaining is not teaching, but lecture that interject a bit of humor or content other attention getting device do keep students more alert than a straight monologue. 10th, students are more likely to follow a lecture alertly when the lecturer maintains eye contact with them. 11th, mind wandering and daydreaming are major cause of student disengagement during lectures. 12th, students who hear their names are usually alerted to listen to what is being said. 13th, to be engaged in lectures, students need to do more than just passively sit and listen. 14. As teacher lecture, they should frequently monitor their students' comprehensions of what is being said. 15. Sometimes students become disengaged during lecture because the teacher uses an unfamiliar word, expression, formula, or symbol. Okay, that's enough from me. I'll give you back to moderator.
Okay, thanks for Muhammad Thoriq Fauzan. The next presenter the next material will be explained by Syifa Wulan. Syifa, times is yours.
Okay, thank you for moderator. Well, I will explain about ideas for cooperative learning session. It have 2 points. The point first is student learning from one another. Students work collaborative with each other for complete a text together. Students learn from their interaction, a large group or small. The group that suits them is the interest group. Interest group are usually used to facilitate cooperative learning. Include the first, it's peer interaction group, in which one student teach another by presenting brief explanation, lesson tutoring, or providing providing help with certain exercise. The second is group exercise, where students review, explore, and provide mutual feedback as part of their knowledge or skill level lesson. The third is interest or achievement level groups. Is organizing group interest level of excitement or a combination of interesting and achievement. And this is group problem solving, in which students use a term approach to carry out project formulate solution. And the point two is quickness and structure meaning engagement. So research studies explain how students spend their time in classroom, show that uh, students tend to have poor level of involvement in their activities, except a small group in teach is actively involvement in learning section. I have the example case. I get example case of the book. The point case is 9.71. As a part of science lesson of 5th grade, Mr. Keynes demonstrated the lecture of dynasty. By adding oil and the map syrup to condensed pills with water, he dragged the student from our group of 6 discussed why the syrup still underwater, while the oil floated on the water surface. After 6 minutes spent in assignment discussion, students in one group no longer bother with the question regarding their observation of Miss Keynes. And socialist interesting, another Miss Keynes was explained the question to another group. Brilliant notifies the what's that that first note that the first group is not very noisy, and Miss Knape raised his voice and his positive with the second group and announcement. Better keep it here. You want. She said that. And fine material properties is very important. Unless you keep your discussion on tags on the four group, their what is that? Simulation certainly interest and go to engage in conversation about the demonstrant. The other members of the group do think are related to the topic of the lesson. After ringing it for the second group to be on the right track, Mr. Kent's moved noisy. Shh, like that. First group say, you didn't follow direction. You should discuss your observation, like that. And then for themselves, after spend for minutes with the second group, is can stop the activities and announcement. Okay, class, let's rest our table back to where it was. Now you understand the idea. Destiny, I want to show you how, and it's always a noisy class. Mr. Ken filed 2 men student engagement because he's okay. Next slide, please. Is ideas for discussion session. It have 2 points. The first point is student engagement during discussion. The success of cooperative learning strategy usually dependent on student focusing on specific topic during discussion section. In order for student be involvement in discussion activity, they must actively listen to what classmates have to say and be willing to provide comments and ask questions related to the topic. And it's keep this book in mind when planning discussion section is the first. The efficient use of time for discussion section dependent in part on the method with clear direction communicating the exchange product to follow. The second is student discussion most likely definitely from the topic of discussion explain the topic determined and the objective of the discussion understood like that. The third is what is that? The focus of the discussion is more likely to be meant that when students feel that the discussion serves a purpose. The fourth is students tend to direct their comment to the teacher, so it's be understanding to teacher. Five is the help minimize direction. You can directly use hand signal like uh, raise your hand like that, and speaker or move the speaker to direct comment to group, speak up or slow down. The thing is, by using one student comments to engagement other student, the model teacher is active listening behavior while uncoding participants. Miss Tower, for example, as read about great idea. The seventh is especially during discussion section that are part of the lesson in which you are requiring learning strategies, engage student in real dialogue that do not have interaction response evaluation or ERI cycle. Next slide, please. And is what is it? Ideas for questioning section. Student engagement during question section, in order for students to inform in question activities, they must listen to each other essential question asked by their teacher, trying to formulate an answer to that question and express their answer in the packing by the teacher or listen to other relieve this answer. For example, it's case 7 to 29. Miss Gordon asked her for grade. What is the capital city of Miss P? Eva, Jackson, Miss Colored. And what's the capital city of Louisiana? Vincent. And Vincent said New Orleans. Several students raised their hand, and Miss Coloredin called Royce, who said Baton Rouge. Miss Coloredin, that's right. Baton Rouge is the capital of Louisiana. Now, how about the capital? In in general, the section of meaningful level question is more interesting to use to understand rather than pronunciation because it is designed to simulation student to think, find, and reason like that. Thank you. That's all for me. I bring back to moderator.
Okay, thanks for Siva. The next material will be explained by me. Okay, I will explain about ideas for independent work season. The first is student engagement during independent work season. Engagement in independent work season requires a student to complete some assigned task without disturbing others also working on the task. When we as a teacher plan for such session, two potential problems should be taken into account. The first is how do you or we as a teacher accommodate students completing the task at different times? And the second is how can we efficiently provide the individual help that student may need to be remain engaged with the task. Next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, because of that, there are 4 points about independent work season. The work is clearly defined as a task in the first place. Actually, it's about direction, about how the student do the task. And then the next is avoid spending too much time with any one student. Actually, this to help one student, we not too much time with one student because other student maybe need our help, our teacher help. And then the C is sequence independent work season so that they are followed by other independent activities with flexible beginning and ending time. And the last is establish some sort of formal routine for requesting help. Next slide. Okay, the next material is ideas for homework assignment. The first is student engagement in homework assignment. Homework assignment typically requires students to allocate their own time for engagement. Engagement in a homework assignment usually requires students to first is understand direction for the assignment. Uh, with understand direction for the assignment, the student can easy for do the task for do the assignment. And the second is schedule time away for school for the assignment. Next, receipts outside of school distraction while completing the assignment task. Last is deliver a report of the complete work in class by a specified deadline. Next slide. Okay, because of that, in ideas for homework assignment, if we are going or if we will give the student homework, we have 8 points about homework assignment. The first is plan learning activities, especially early in school term, to teach students how to budget time for homework and procedures for completing homework. Second is simple, uncomplicated homework assignments are more likely to be followed than complex ones. Next, set short-range deadline dates for completion of intermediate steps that eventually lead to final completion. Next, all homework assignments should clearly be an integral part of an overall plan of learning activities designed to help students achieve worthwhile goals. And A, student behavior patterns of diligently doing homework assignment are encouraged when their efforts are positively reinforced by feedback provided by their teacher. Next, giving tests requiring students to complete tasks that are nearly identical to those assigned for homework. Next, give punishment and positively reinforce. And the last is parents appraisals of homework expectation. Next slide. Okay, the next material is classroom design that enhance student engagement. We are as a teacher must to design our classroom. Your classroom acoustical characteristic need to allow students to hear what you intend them to hear without disturbing rever- reverberation and background noise. Next slide. Okay, look at the picture. In this picture, uh, designed by Miss Del Rio. Now, this this satisfied with the inflexible arrangement. Miss Del Rio makes a list for the accommodation her room to provide. One, quick and easy access for her between any 2 points in the room. Second, designate quiet area for students to engage in individualized work. Third, designate a large group activity area for an entire class to congregate for discussion, lectures, tutorial session, and media presentation. The fourth is technology for projecting computer displaying and electronically storing artifacts of writing and image generated during learning activities, such as notes written on the board or from student homework. The fifth, small group activities area for cooperative group to conduct their business. And then storage space for equipment and material to be kept out of sight. Next, a secure teacher's desk in a location with a favorable vantage point. Next, a relatively quiet reading room and mini library that can comfortably accommodate several students at a time. And then a timeout room for isolating students. Next, a private room in which Miss Del Rio can hold uninterrupted conferences with individuals. And the last is a two-way communication device with which she can quickly summon backup support in crisis situation. For this uh, for this for this picture, we can follow the room designed to our future classroom. Okay, thanks for myself. Okay, class, in the end our presentation. Thank you. Uh, I think enough our presentation. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.